To me, winning was like breathing. Everything that I did was centered around this idea that I had to win and I needed to reverse engineer the process to win. And then when you do win, it is euphoric and it's powerful, but it is also fleeting and it's very short and it's nothing like you possibly could have imagined. You got to stick with it. So that emotional stuff that you're feeling is natural. It's normal. Embrace it. It makes you human, but don't allow it to paralyze you from taking action. That's the key, is by taking action and a decision to first surrender to the outcome and then make the choice to say, now I'm going to figure out, identify with what the next step is. You can persevere and get through this, but you have to surrender to that, have the hard conversation, accept it for what it is, and then say, here are the core tenets that make me and who I want to become. Here's how I will achieve to become that person.
Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness.
Today, we're joined by someone who knows what it's like to stand on the highest of podiums and then ask himself, now what? Apolo Ohno is an 8-time Olympic medalist, a world champion, and yes, he's even had the ultimate honor, his own Wheaties box. But what happens after the medals, the media, and the applause? Apolo has taken his gold medal mindset and reshaped it into something even more powerful, a platform to talk about mental health, reinvention, and finding purpose when your first dream ends. And today we're going to learn how to redefine yourself after that major chapter closes, whether that's a retirement, a transition from the military, burnout, or identity loss. You'll get practical, honest tools for building mental strength, emotional agility, and purpose beyond the pivot. Apolo, welcome to the show, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And you guys are talking about all the topics that are very relevant, I think, especially in today's world more than ever. So it's important stuff, man. It's cool. You know, hopefully it'll touch a lot of people.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, man. And Will, my friend, my brother, how are you?
It's good to be back. I think I got to listen to this episode just by that intro.
Right?
Yeah, hey, it's great to have you here, Apolo. It's great to be back recording another show for our wonderful growing community of Men Talking Mindfulness. So thank you for supporting us. And if you want to plug into more of what we're doing out there, head to mentalkingmindfulness.com. We still have space in our Spartan race. Apolo, you're welcome to join us down in Dallas, Texas for our Spartan race, October 19th. We have a team Spartan race we're going to be part of, and we're going to have a group that's going to go. So that's October 19th. Once again, mentalkingmindfulness.com. And hey, you want to be we're still in the poorhouse with this show. So if you want to become a sponsor, head to mentalkingmindfulness.com and become a sponsor of the show. But let's kick this off. And again, thank everybody and share it on social media. Leave us a review. And let's kick it off with our one breath grounding practice, which I'm sure you learned a lot about breathing in order to be such an esteemed athlete, Apolo. We just like to remind men that, or actually wake them up to the fact that they have the ability to breathe and calm themselves down. So we just like to do one breath. But let's start, eyes closed if you like, or just open that chest and let's just exhale all the way out, nice and easy. To really hit the bottom and exhale and get as empty as you can as my phone rings. Good. Let's take a big giant inhale. Fill all the way up through your nose, from the bottom to the middle, all the way to the top. And one more little sip of air through the nose into your sinus cavity in your brain. Hold for 3, 2, 1, and exhale. Let the breath go out. Just nice and slow. Let it go. Let it go. Let it go. And here we are, arrived a little bit deeper into the podcast. And let's do this, John.
All right. Well, yeah. Well, as I was saying in the green room, if you will, for Apolo, I was telling him that, we have a mutual friend now. I met Sally Roberts a couple of weeks ago, and she introduced me to Apolo. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I got on an email with him, and I totally fanboyed. So apologize for that. But we're so excited to have you here, Apolo. And we will jump right in. So, you've said that you had trained, I had trained my whole life to win, but I didn't know how to live after I won. Can you take us to that moment and what does it feel like to finish before you're ready for what's next?
Well, and I'm happy that Sally brought us together, first of all. Sally is a childhood friend who literally grew up down the street from me, just south of Seattle. And when I was like literally like 11, 12 years old, and I was in the Olympic Training Center. I heard her voice from behind. I was at Apollo, and then I turned around at Sally, and she was competing for U.S. women's wrestling. So full
she's a
circle
stud.
into that, and she's an incredible. She's got incredible military career. Now she's got all this incredible diplomacy that she's focused on using sport and some nonprofit stuff called Wrestle Like a Girl. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's get it. I had to give that shout out because Sally is like a near and dear friend.
Absolutely. She deserves that.
So look, I trained, and this is like probably relevant to many people in what they've done in their lives and in a lot of people's career paths. But as an Olympic athlete, I trained my entire life for something. I won, multiple times throughout my career, and then at some point, I never had the foresight to really look beyond what was the sport. To me, it was. And it's so timely that we're talking about this today, by the way, because there's been some kind of virality going around with a very famous golfer who went on social media yesterday, or this was going viral because he was talking about this win, and then he's basically saying I feel no different when I would win, and it's just not that important to me, and if anything would take away from my family and my kids and my faith, then he's like, I would walk away from the world of golf. And so I thought that was very interesting. It was very vulnerable, very honest. What was so fascinating to me was because when I was in that position, I did not have that psychology. I was the complete opposite. To me, winning was like breathing. And everything that I did was centered around this idea that I had to win and I needed to reverse engineer the process to win. And then when you do win, it is euphoric and it's powerful, but it is also fleeting and it's very short and it's nothing like you possibly could have imagined. It's kind of like any other race. You win a World Cup, you win a domestic race, you win the Olympics. It's the same distance. It's the same athletes. There's just more people watching and we artificially create this persona that's there. And so, which by the way, I'm very grateful for those experiences. But the transition after was really challenging because I had been spending my entire life jumping out of the plane, metaphorically speaking, with no parachute and landing every time and being safe. And so when the time came when I jumped out of the airplane, I was like, oh man, I have no plan B. There has been no preparation. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm really good at. I can't, just use the same cookie cutter approach that I did towards short track speed skating and the Olympic path towards whatever it is that I was going to do in my life. So I was in one component, extremely mature, had incredible life lessons, amazing amounts of resilience and grit and all these very powerful attributes. But on the other side, I was empty because it had never been practiced. And I talk about this a lot. When we face chaos or situation in our lives, our body, the feelings that we have, never pause and say, hey, Apollo, what would you like to do now? Giving us an option list. It just defaults to what we have practiced in the years prior. And so if you have practiced or not practiced, your body will default to this state that can be very unfamiliar, which then triggers this fear, which then triggers this unknown, and then you don't feel safe. So it was a hard transition post-career. And by the way, I retired in 2010. This is 15 years ago. God, it's crazy saying that. And the year after the Olympic Games is your agent and your manager are just packing these appearances. I was never in a city for longer than 2 days. So for 2010, the entire year, I was just traveling around like crazy. And then all of a sudden the lights start to get a little bit quieter, or the lights get dimmer, the sound gets quieter, the calls slowly start to dissipate, and the American public, arguably rightly so, move on to the next thing, get back to life, and you're no longer the center of attention, right? And not that you want that center of attention, but when you've become accustomed to this is how it is, and then now you're kind of left with the most important thing, which is the inner thought and the inner voice. And so you're communicating with yourself about all right, well, what's next? There is no more Wheaties box coming. There's another athlete who's there, who's more talented, perhaps better genetically designed, greater story, more sponsorship opportunity, and just faster or whatever it is. And so I had to have that really hard conversation with myself. And I'd spent a lifetime saying no to everything and now began the process of just exploring. And so what I did, my hard pivot was the what now conversation was really tough. And what's interesting, in the past 15 years, it comes in waves where I thought I figured it out in the first 4 years. Another 4 years goes by and I'm like, oh man, I need to go back to that same centering process and grounding, or whatever you want to call it, to understand, what do I really want to do? Am I on the right path? Am I here my grandma asked me a long time ago, she said, Apollo, do you feel like what you're doing on earth is in alignment with what you feel the world has put you for and what you think that you want to do for the world? Are those things are they compatible? And I never really understood what that meant when I was younger. And I was saying, like, my first Olympic Games, I was 19 years old going on 15. I just was, a little bit stunted. So long-winded way, an answer of saying the transition is hard. It was hard, and it's an ongoing process. I feel like I have a fairly strong handle on identifying what are the core tenets of the things that keep me grounded and strong in the face of fire or wind. And, but there are times, because I'm human, where I naturally defer back to my own state that I did during those Olympic days, which perhaps no longer serve me in the person who I desire to be today. And so it's a constant, tug and push, I guess.
Sure. Well, I mean, that inner work is clearly you've done it. And even if there is that constant tug and push, you know that you're aware of it, right? And a lot of people aren't. I mean, I'll go into a quick anecdote, my own personal anecdote, and that's very micro compared to yours. But I ran track and cross country in high school, and it was my life. Like, I sacrificed my grades, I sacrificed girlfriends. It was my everything. And I remember we went undefeated my senior year, and we won the state championship. And I was so excited. And then literally we drove home from the state championship a couple of hours, and I sat on my living room floor and I cried. And I was like, what in the heck is happening? Like, why am I so sad? But it was the end of an era in my life. And, I can only imagine what that's like for you guys who have gone on way past high school and put in way more hours of training, and the level of intensity is significantly higher. That said, most people don't have gold medals, but they do have a finish line of some kind, right? Like I just mentioned, my cross country season was over. My cross country quote unquote career was over. Kids leave home. Parents have kids leaving home. Careers change. Identities shift. For someone who might be in that right now, what advice do you have for them? Somebody might be asking, who am I without this title, this role, or this mission?
And it's a great question. So, I think whenever we think about the finish line, we think about this like end point and then this new beginning. And I think there's some validity there. There's a new chapter. This is one chapter of your life. I think if we can reframe the way we think about finish line as the finish line is actually just a mirror, right? The mirror it shows you everything that carried you to get to this point. And it'll show you again if what you need to do to move on to the next phase of your life. And so I think identity subscription, or these things that we fall in love with because of the affirmations from the coach, from the team, from the public, from the military, the public, your family, your friends, and your results that are giving you these check boxes. Yep, this is why you're here. Yep, this is what you're good at. Yep, it's like your ikigai, your like reason for being and your purpose.
Yeah.
So it's giving you these signals, all while it's not preparing you for or telling you that what you are in that period of your life. Yes, this is an incredible moment. However, it's not a title, right? What it is it's the attributes that make up that experience. And so if you could remove the title away from, champion gold medals and say like, okay, well, who am I as a skater, as an athlete? What were the things that I did that were exceptional? And can I take those exceptional traits and qualities and apply them towards the next path of my life, whatever that might be? But for someone who's about to retire, who doesn't know what they want to do, who's very afraid, the one thing that I can give in terms of advice is the elements of discipline, of sacrifice, of hard work, of grit, of gratitude, of learning how to win and learning how to lose. These are life skills. They are not sports skills. These are skills that allow you to persevere, to grow, to deal with friction, which is a really critical piece of moving forward. And so if this is the mirror, now you're facing another friction moment, just like there's a really big opportunity for a race or a competition or a mission. And now it's all about understanding and embracing that friction as the next phase of your life continues. I think what athletes get wrong the most because of the self-fulfilling prophecy of consistent receiving instantaneous feedback in what we're doing, like you do one weight repetition, you know if it was good or bad or technique, whatever, you're getting this instantly. So you can have this sense of progress dialed in. When you retire, that's no longer there. You could work for a company for years and not really know if you're actually getting that much better, except for the end of the year. And so I think that what we have to do is we have to change and reframe the way we think about these things, and also realize I didn't make an Olympic team in 1 year. I didn't win gold medals even sometimes in 4 years. It may have taken 8 to 10 years for me to get to an exceptional mastery component of what I did in that sport. And just like the next phase of your life or this new transition of your life, the same component has to happen. You have to approach it with the same beginner's mindset. And I think when we do that, we remove these other external factors and signals that are having these false expectations because we're so used to being good at something so quickly. It's coming easily and becoming pattern and routine. And instead, we're approaching it with, I'm not good at this thing yet, and that's okay, but I'm going to learn. So the way that we communicate with ourselves, and by the way, this is how I did it, was I just started to change the words that I was using in my own head. So, naturally, I would look in the mirror and I was deeply dissatisfied with who I was in sport, which helped me propel myself to dig deeper and train harder. But that can be a prison in itself, right? Between your own two ears, because you're just living in this space that's unhealthy. And I think the way that we communicate with ourselves in silence is really critically important to understand how we move forward. And not saying you need to look in the mirror all the time and be happy with what you see, because I know that people are perfectionists and they're hungry to grow, which is a good thing. But at some point, there is this kind of, I love that statue of the man kind of, chiseling away at himself, the man carving, and that self-fulfilling. That is like, to me, like what we're all working towards. So it's a process, right? And I think that's, it takes time.
Yeah, it's more so a deep process as well, because you're literally reprogramming. You're talking about how you're speaking to yourself. And if you took on skating and started to succeed in skating early on, like very early. I think you're 14 when you went to the first Olympics, right? I mean, 19. Sorry. Yeah. It was, but leading up to that 19, it's just like that constant programming of, getting up, doing everything that you need to do in order to be an accomplished skater. And you just keep repeating that programming and those cycles and those habits again and again and again and again. And you do it for like many years, right? And then all of a sudden that ends. It's like, now what? Who am I? How do I change things? And like what you're talking about, and what's also in Hard Pivot, is like how to really begin to reprogram and also take on the next phase of life, instead of going back and be like, hey, why am I not on another Wheaties box or something, So it's like, but yeah, I don't know.
I'm always fascinated when I see like serial entrepreneurs succeed in many different sectors of business, like healthcare, fintech, logistics, real estate. And there's like similarities, right? There's like foundational principles, I'm sure, across all these different business lines that people are doing, but it's different. It's like competing in different sports. Yes, there's like an athletic component, but like me competing against Usain Bolt is going to result in like a comedy show. It's going to be very funny.
Unless he's on
and vice versa. And vice versa, man.
Yeah. So I think like, when I was younger, I would have said like, this is the path that everyone should follow, and this is how you do it. I think as I get older, what I realize, we all have very unique backgrounds and circumstance as we were kids. And those childhood formative years are really ingrained in how we approach challenge, chaos, how we even like dissect and digest the words, the vocabulary of the English language means something slightly different to every single one of us. They may be attached to a moment with our dad, our mom, on the playground. And so as I grow, I realize that there's no one single path to really getting forward in this transition phase of what the next thing is. For some people, it's all about momentum. And they're like, I don't want to think about it too much. I just need to get action and move fast. And that's what's going to create change for me. And for others, they're like, I need to sit and be quiet and remove the noise so I can hear my inner voice. That was more what I needed to do. But again, everyone's different. And I think, because we're the governor of our own speed limit, it's really critical for folks to just what is that path for you? What works for you? Like my warm up in short track speed skating may not work for one of my teammates. He or she needs to do something entirely different. And so we are unique in certain aspects, although we share this kind of through line of similarity. And that's a really important thing, is just realizing, yes, try different things that other people are talking about, go down these paths of whether it's visualization, obviously meditation. The power of the breath is like, I think that's pretty remarkably known to be as this like resetting, centering component that is
100%
widely underutilized,
yes,
both in
100%.
sport and in like traditional life.
Yeah.
I don't have kids, but I can imagine, as I was flying yesterday, someone's kids were screaming on the plane, and I looked over and I saw the mom. She was like sitting like 2 rows behind me. I saw the mom, and she just literally just goes,
Yeah, exactly.
Good for
and just
her.
like this moment to like, just like get this kid to like calm down.
Yeah.
I've been on both sides of that coin. And
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, I'm flying to see Will with my 6-year-old on Friday,
Yeah.
so I might be in that very
Another adventure.
Yeah, I'm going to be taking a lot of breaths with you and Taylor, or sorry, you and your son here, John.
That's true.
Yeah. But anyway,
Yeah. So, man, I'm glad you mentioned that beginner's mind, man. We've talked about that on the show, and I think
It's
that's
everything.
I think that's incredibly important in everything. Like if you're not asking questions, if you think you know it all, that's one of the most dangerous things out there. And we've talked about the curse of the gifted, right? Those who are incredibly good at what they do just kind of naturally, but then those who don't have that beginner's mind or growth mindset, they're not going to take on, new ways of doing things. Maybe you have a coach that comes in, he's like, hey, I want you to try this agility or this movement it's going to improve your skating. But you're like, I've been skating my whole life. Why am I going to listen to you? You're a football strength coach. Well, maybe there's something that applies there, but then that growth mindset or that beginner's mind also transfers to the hard pivots that we have in life, is being curious, asking the questions, not wanting to be that know-it-all, right? So, I guess my next question was kind of answered there, right? You've gone from the Olympics, and now you've gone to boardrooms, you've gone to mindfulness summits, which is great. Like, what have you learned about redefining performance off the ice?
Well, I think performance is how you show up as your best self, to put it simply.
Great definition.
Right? So it's a personal experience. The way we keep score in sport is obviously through medals or through championships. In life, there's kind of no real score. I think you define what that is really critically important to you. Many of us live through the kind of external societal expectations of what we deem to be successful or not, whether that's, money or status. I think on a personal level, to me, it was really important to redefine what those things meant to me. And my father was a huge component of always constantly pushing me to say, and it's funny because my dad teaches me uniquely in like these 5 to 7 year chunks of time. So the way he was communicating me when I was younger is obviously very different than he's communicating today. And he always kind of pushes me, is like, make sure that you have spiritual transparency in whatever you're doing. I'm like, you've never even used the word spiritual before in the 43 years that I've been on this earth. Like, what YouTube are you watching? Like, where are you getting this information? Who are you listening to? I want to see this content. But he said this to me, and I'm like, what does that mean? And I think to me, it's very clear, right? Like, we know certain things and aspects of our life that we do that fit in alignment with our true north, the thing that are at our deepest core of what we deem to be important and critical to our living and breathing. And John, I just, as I grow and as I continuously seek like both self-improvement and also wanting to be performance based, right? Because my goal is to remind the corporate sector, remind folks and executives that I work with of both their inner power that is contained between the space that they fail to look the most, which is between their own 2 ears. That is the greatest asset on this planet. And also listen to the inner voice. And that can be heart, that can be spirit, whatever you want to attune to that. So performance to me in sport was clear. It was like, I want to win and I want to be the absolute best that I can be on the ice. As I grew throughout sport, it started to transition. Obviously, I wanted to win still because that was a key kind of bullseye. But it really became, I want to be able to exhaust any and all possibilities that I left anything on the table in terms of preparation. So the goal was I want to reach these Olympic Games before I have raced and be able to look at myself in the mirror and say, like, you gave all of yourself to this moment. That was really, really powerful for me to be able to do that. And it made me train completely insane as a result, because getting the personal fulfillment and the personal, yep, you did this, was really hard to do because I was my own worst self-critic. And then when I retired, I think performance is really different. So yes, there's scoreboards in terms of business, in terms of specific goals that I have, but really performance to me is how I show up in my health. So there's 4 pillars of health, right? Like how I sleep, how I eat, how I move, how I think. That's one side. And then there's these 5 golden principles that I talk about often, right?
So I was going to ask you about that very thing next. So what are those, and why'd you choose those?
These are performance to me today, right? So the performance to me today is gratitude, giving, grit, gearing up, which is like setting new expectations, and then getting into action, go and do things. So that's the performance metric for me today is, when I'm able to kind of root myself in some form of gratitude or see a situation for what it is, have that perspective. Traveling is a really great way to do this. Many people don't have the luxury of traveling, but when you do travel, you can have perspective on what things are and what they're not, depending on where you live. Giving is really all about not just your own communities, but it's giving yourself the best possible chance at success. So I was speaking 2 days ago at a summit to a group of pharmaceutical executives, and we were talking about this form of giving. And the concept was like, look, if you seek performance in your internal group or within yourself, perhaps there's nothing wrong with the car or the engine that is you. Perhaps you just need to remove the brick from the brake. You need to stop self-sabotaging yourself in your own way. We all have a fairly clear understanding of what we need to do on a daily basis to be effective, right? And to be our best. And we don't have to be 100% perfect in those ways. And so the really giving is just like, stop putting your own roadblocks in your own way because you're so handcuffed to your own routines that give you the falsity belief that you have control, right? So this can be so basically you do things routinely to seek some semblance of control because it's familiar, even if it's bad for you, even if it's not in line with the goal that you ultimately want. And this is a human behavioral thing that we all have to deal with on a daily basis. And so just by saying, like, I'm going to stop doing that because life is hard enough, and I'm going to try to just allow myself to just keep moving forward without getting my own way. Grit is fairly simple, right? Just embrace change, embrace challenge, realize that friction is a really critical piece to the growth of the human species. And if you look out the millions of years or however long we've been on this planet, every turning point was when we had immense amount of friction. Every great performance was because there was huge friction at some point in life. And without it, we don't have these breakthroughs. And there's actually incredible science now. I'm sure you guys have seen this around what the brain does when it's under these high amounts of duress. And then you allow it. It basically grows, right? That's what happens.
Neuroplasticity, yeah. We keep bringing. I love this one phrase, George Mumford. I don't know if you know George Mumford. He was like the mindfulness meditation coach of the Bulls and Phil Jackson and Kobe Bryant. And he says, really simple: no struggle, no swag. And it's in that friction point you're talking about is where you can develop your character, program yourself in a new way that's actually really empowering, and it's from those friction points. I mean, which are so. I mean, they're just necessary. The obstacle's the way. Yeah, hopefully Ryan Holiday, I think, is going to come on the show eventually as well. I know, right?
Yeah.
But let's so what was it like? I mean, you achieved a lot of success, like television shows, Wheatie boxes, like all sorts of different appearances, all over the place. During this time, and then even after. And both maybe, like, what was it like to keep your ego in check?
I mean, I have good friends around who love to make sure they can smash that down.
Okay, good. Well,
that's a really good way.
I have my wife around for that.
I shouldn't assume. I'm sorry. I shouldn't assume, Apollo, that you had a big ego. I know I would have a big ego probably if I was on a Wheaties box. So sorry to make that assumption.
No, ego. I know. Look, speaking of Brian, I know Ryan. I think he wrote another book called "Ego Is the Enemy."
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure enough, I think I've got it on my shelf back here.
Yeah, great book. I think ego is important, right?
Yeah, in some ways, for sure.
It's a driver. I mean, look, I for sure had moments where the ego was absolutely there. It was there for sure in sport, or else I don't think I would have done the things that I did. I I loved to dominate, competition, and just I loved it. I loved the way it felt. But I think keeping it in check was really, it was a process, like I guess I never was one of those athletes who was like, I'm going to win every race. No one is as good as me. I never thought in that way. I actually thought the opposite. I was like, I'm not as good as everybody else. I'm the underdog, even when I wasn't. And this was a little bit of a challenge within my own 2 years that I faced. I never thought I was as good as I actually was. And I probably could have performed better had I had more, I think, intentional confidence versus staying in the back of the pack. But it makes for a tantalizing last couple of laps in a race. When you
very
play
exciting, very exciting, right?
Yeah. Well, I think keeping the ego in check was. My father was really, really good. He was a good part of that, right?
Yeah.
He's just like, you're just like everybody else. He was like, you got to do more than everybody else because you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah. What about the other side of ego? Is like, how has humility been a greater part of your life, like off the ice since, those days of high achievement?
Yeah. I mean, humility comes in the form of loss, right? You don't really you don't know humility until you get smoked bad financially,
right,
or in a relationship, or in the public, you fall from grace, right? The American public loves to lift the hero up and then rip them back down again.
Yeah, they do. They do.
So I think, like, not that they did that with me, but I just think that, like, that was a big part of it, man, is I had to realize and recognize that these things were temporary. And I never wanted to be remembered for my sport. It was so weird. When I was younger, I always wanted to succeed so badly in business and outside of sport that I just shied away from, like, embracing my own brand in the first 10 years of retirement. I really did. And I traveled all over the world. I took on all these crazy jobs because I was just so hungry to prove myself that I'm more than an athlete. See, I have a half a brain.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, the journey's been it's been very interesting to say.
Well, keep talking about that journey. I mean, you've said that, you felt lost and emotionally flatlined, post Olympics and retirement. So, what has the journey been like, to find the new you, and, that you can be happy with? What was that journey like? Or, can you take us through maybe like a little bit of a timeline or maybe some of the emotional struggles in order to get to this, like, this is who Apolo is now?
Yeah. So I think if I could summarize, because, a lot has happened in 15 years, is we've got, we've got a deep desire to win in business, a deep desire to win outside of the sporting space, a deep desire to understand why I do what I do in relationships, in work, in behaviors that I have. Where does that come from? So that led me down the path of, like, doing deeper work and, like, understanding more around, human behavior and psychology, and trying to follow somewhat of a more interest in spiritual path. There's been amazing wins in business post-career. There's been amazing losses and huge failures. There's been distrust. There's been bad business partners that I thought were friends. All the stuff that you can imagine has been there. Getting burned, getting money taken from you, all this stuff has happened, right? And what I can say is today, as I look back on that past life, was what I was chasing was not actually in line with what I really want, right? The result and what comes with the result is thoughtfully was what I actually really wanted, which was, you want freedom, you want to be recognized, you want to feel important, you want to feel like what you do matters, you want to be seen and heard. But all that stuff can happen in a different light, depending on where the ego is at play, right? So we talked about the ego. Now, a lot of those things are ego-based, right? Well, why do you want to be recognized outside of your sport? Like, what importance does that actually have in terms of your real goals? You could have tremendous success and be completely anonymous to the world. But we know we have friends like that, right? Who they're just under the radar. Nobody is who they are, and they crush it. So there's always this, like, addiction, I think, that occurs. And so I went through the phases of chasing the wrong things. And that's not to say, by the way, that I'm not still very motivated financially and really wanting to win in those areas of my life, because I enjoy that process. But I think what I do know is the things that are truly important to me start with questions like, can I do this in 5 years? And will I be happy doing this in 5 years? Can I do it with the same intensity and excitement that I have right now, right, as I will in 5 years? And that's a real question, right? So I was a part of a venture capital team that was based out of San Francisco. And to give you an example, like this was a hard charging, work 7 days a week. Like these guys were animals. They were deep data scientists. They were engineers by trade. They underwrote risk into investments by just scraping millions of lines of code and plugging them into machines. I don't know how to write code. I don't even know how to read code, right? I was like the only non-technical person on the team, but it was an amazing learning experience. But what I learned by the end of this was that I do not want to do this in 5 years. That was very clear. I was like, I don't think that I have the mental passion for something like this that's going to allow me to continuously feel like I'm pulled because this is fun to me. And something that someone said the other day, it might have been Naval Ravikant. He's like,
yeah, Naval's amazing.
I love to, yeah, he's like, well, I love to play. Yeah. It's very hard to beat someone who loves to play what they do because they're going to go shoot the ball every day after 6 p.m. because they just love playing. Right. And so to me, it wasn't play. It was actual work and it was really exhausting. So, but in the beginning, it was very exciting because why? Because I was thinking about the end result. I was thinking about what could happen if. So this kind of process versus prize component became a really, really important integral part of my life, which is, can I really embody myself in the process of what this is? And embrace it. Now, obviously, not all parts of this is going to be peaches and cream. It's not going to be fun, just like training. There was many training sessions that I was not good at naturally and I didn't love. And just like in any career path, there's going to be components that you just despise and don't like. And I think the goal is to get successful enough to be able to offload those things to folks that is their specialty and they do love it. That's a great component of a leader, right? Is kind of bring in people to take things off your plate that are really good at those things that you are maybe their secondary attributes. So I mean, it's been like an up and down roller coaster, man. And I think it all centers back to, do I want to continue to do this in real time? Do I really want to continuously improve in this realm of business or whatever I'm doing? And can I do this? And the last part is like, is this in alignment with what the impact is that I want to have on the world? And a lot of times it's not.
Well, as I was going through my military transition, I didn't get as deeply into some of these other opportunities or industries. As you mentioned, I had a wise mentor that said I need to speak with people in these industries, have 1,000 cups of coffee and learn about these industries before I said, yeah, that's what I wanted to get into, like commercial real estate or venture capital, all these different things, because they were bright and shiny objects to me. But he told me, he said, hey, have these meals, have these coffees with these people to learn what you don't want to do. And it's just as important to learn what you don't want to do as it is to identify what it is that you want to do, because that's part of the process. Talked about chipping away on himself, right? The statue, that's chipping away the pieces that you don't want. And I think you just talked about one right there in like, hey, could I enjoy the journey versus the destination? I think that's huge.
Yeah,
so good on you for doing that.
I mean, well, I agree with that, John. And what do you guys think about like we have a younger generation of folks who are told two things. They're told, do what your passion is. And the other side of the coin is like, it doesn't matter. You need to do the work. At what component because a lot of times there's things that we didn't love to do. We just did them. And it was very formative. It was very, very powerful. Yeah. But what are your thoughts? I'm curious what your thoughts are.
What you're talking about here in a lot of ways is like through that like new self-discovery or self-discovery in general is like try again, fail, like learn. Just keep rubbing yourself up against what you're like. I think it's like, it is two sides of the same coin, but I think it's like, but in order to really discover what you're passionate about and really get good at what you're passionate about, you must keep just keep trying and trying new things and keep that. For me, it's like keep that beginner's mindset on. Don't let your ego get in the way. Don't let failure, talk you out of creating another attempt. And you just keep trying and going forward. And also, I think it's really important too is like surrounding yourself with, like you talked about, you're checking your ego, is surrounding yourself with good people, that are going to be honest and authentic with you. And that's going to be like, I don't know if that's going to work, but try it, but let's come back and talk about it. But John, what are your feelings on that?
Well, yeah, the pursue your passion piece, honestly, I think I'm a little bit on the other side of that coin is that, yeah, there's some validity to that, but there's also, you got to be realistic, right? Like if I'm passionate about speed skating short track, hey, maybe I shouldn't pursue that because I'm probably not going to be good at it. So like I think there's some validity to pursue your passion because that's going to make you happy. And I mean, it comes back to what you mentioned earlier, Apollo, that what is it? The ikigai, right? The intersection of what you're good at, what you can get paid for, and what is the other aspect? What you're good at, what you're going to get paid for, something else. The Venn diagram, that little center piece where it all overlaps, that's the ikigai. And if that can be your passion, I think that's the other piece, is that's the piece that you're passionate about. If that's truly it, hey, you're blessed, because there's a lot of people whose passion I don't think aligns with their ikigai.
Yeah. Well, I think
So
also,
that's my 2 cents on it.
For passion, it's like, I think like you start off in one direction and you might go somewhere else. But I think it's like, I think it's important. I think it's, exactly. I think it's very important to, like, instead of getting out of the transactional mind, be like, you know what, this is what success looks like. This is like what I need to do and the accolades I need to achieve in order to achieve success and look successful, versus like working from, more gut and heart-centric way of like moving forward and be like, you know what, this is what feels good. I'm going to move forward in that direction, but also being willing to learn again and being able to pivot or change when you need to, because I think it's like, better than just, because this is kind of the way I was raised. It's just, I didn't really know what I wanted to do until much later in my life, until I was like 28 or something like that. And, or at least the direction I wanted to go in. But I was kind of given like a prescription of how to live life, and through my family, and that was reinforced by, my immediate parents, everyone in my family. And it was just like, oh, that's the way life is. Plus I see an older brother go off and do that. And there's no real, no real passion, no like deep passion for it. It was just like, well, everyone else is doing it. So that's what I'm going to do. So I think it is important to like listen to that internal passion, like not from here, not in your head, but in your heart, and move towards that. And then, then being willing to change, like I've said. I don't know. How does that sit with you, Apollo?
I think it makes sense. I am curious also, like, what would you tell your kids?
Yeah.
Like John, for example, like you're saying you're about to travel with your kids. Like, how do you communicate this to your kids, right? At the age of 6?
Great point.
Well, now I have to kind of go back on my words, because I've told them to pursue their passions, right? Like my 8-year-old little girl, I live out in Colorado Springs, and every year the Thunderbird, show team,
so
aviation
cool.
team, they're awesome. I think, I don't tell my Navy friends this, but I think they're better than the Blue Angels. But anyhow.
Nobody heard that in the podcast, John. Nobody heard that in the podcast. Yeah.
So
I got to ride in an F-16.
I saw that on your Instagram. Badass, dude.
It was so cool, man.
Fucking badass.
Yeah. There's the first female Thunderbird lives like 2 blocks from me. And, I got to introduce her to my daughter, who at one point wanted to fly jets. And she was told when she was like 4 years old by a silly neighbor boy, girls can't fly jets. And so I built her this cardboard box jet. And then I was like, hey, you want to go and, because she saw the Thunderbirds, because you could see them from my house. I was like, hey, you want to go and meet the first female Thunderbird ever? And sure enough, we had coffee with her. And I was like, I'm telling my daughter, you can do anything that you set your mind to, right? You can pursue your passion. If that's what you want to do. And funny enough, after we met with her, she was like, oh no, I want to work at PetSmart. So I was like, all right, if that's your passion, then pursue that. So I was like, oh man, did I just waste this lady's time? But anyway, man, I'm split on that one. Pursuing your passion, I think, here's my revamp thing. Pursuing your passion, I think, is important, but I think you also have to figure out what that passion, how it's going to impact the rest of the world, how it's going to impact others in a positive way. I think we all need to ask that question, because if it is only serving you, if your passion is only serving you, I think that's incredibly selfish.
It eventually is empty, I feel, too. It's empty.
Yeah, I do too.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not saying that everything we do is completely altruistic, right? Like Apollo, you certainly didn't become an Olympic athlete to serve others only. But now that you have that platform, I mean, holy cow, that's an incredibly powerful platform to go and serve others, whether they're transitioning Olympic athletes or corporate teams who are going through. I mean, you've got a great platform, and now you can see that your passion has served others in a much, I won't say a much more powerful way, but in a powerful way. So I think that's the question. How can your passion positively affect others? If it's not something that's there, then maybe you need to adjust. That's my 2 cents. So.
Yeah,
I guess
makes sense.
4 cents now because I said 2 cents earlier.
Yeah.
So
It's a hard, I don't know. I mean, younger people that are listening to this, it's like, I mean, that's why, again, I think it's important to have mentors, or to get in a group, have a mastermind, have, people that have, that are older than you, that have, been down the road, and like someone like you, Apollo, like I'm sure you would advise Olympic athlete or any young man or young woman in a certain way based on your experience. But like you've obviously did what you're passionate about. It serves you very well, like you're talking about right now, and what you've been able to do with it. But I think another thing is like life's a journey. And it's going to have many different chapters, and it could be filled of like times that are very happy and times that can be very dark. And I think what's really important also is developing the skills in order to navigate this road as best as you possibly can, with the biggest open mind that you possibly can. And also, you mentioned, giving and these golden elements that you had, the golden principles you had talked about. And, if you really aspire to those kind of things, you're just going to have programmed and tooled properly in order to take on what's coming next as you just keep moving forward and you listen to that heart and that passion.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons that Sally connected us is that we're kind of both working in the mental health space, as far as mental health for those who are going through a major transition. And you talk about mental health not being a destination, right? Just like Will just talked about people experiencing chapters of happiness. You don't arrive at happiness. You experience joy, and that's a phase. And I think mental health is also a phase. Like, you don't arrive at this positive mental health destination. It's a practice. In your journey today, what does your mental fitness routine look like? And with that, what is a completely non-negotiable?
A non-negotiable, which I'm still not the best at, is usually sleep and exercise.
No, sure.
I'm not surprised.
Those two are
the exercise piece that surprises me, but the sleep I'm not surprised by.
Yeah.
The sleep is tricky. Those are the non-negotiables. I've seen the patterns in my behavior over the past 15 years where if I'm off the wagon in those 4 pillars, how I'm sleeping, how I'm eating, how I'm moving, how I'm sleeping, those are like the table legs. If one of them is wobbly, it's just like annoying when you're at the dinner table. If 2 of them are wobbly, it's a little dangerous. If all 3 or 3 of them are wobbly, the table goes down, and that's you. So I don't try to be perfect in those areas. I try to be mindful to make those things somewhat of a priority. I think habituation with the phone is a real issue because of emails and staying connected and always going. But I think non-negotiables are sleep and exercise. Those are the 2 things. And then the way that I keep myself in check today is those are the 2 things that I prioritize the most. I mean, my sanctuary for anxiety and stress and rage and anger and sadness is through exercise, through training, whether it's in a weight room, through a run. I always feel better after, no matter how little sleep that I've gotten, no matter how horrible my day is. And if I have access to a sauna, even better, right? You crank up that heat and it feels amazing. So those things have been lifesavers in so many different respects post-career. And I didn't realize that, right? As an athlete, I was like, well, I'm done training. I don't have to train anymore. It's not my job. And now I don't train for anything other than for this thing right here. I am a better person when I'm on top of my sleep and my workouts. And you put in there, how you eat, that helps. And then how you think is a really important part. We talked about this at the beginning of our conversation, where who you see in the mirror and how you communicate to that person. You yourself is always listening, whether you know it or not, of the things and the words that you say to yourself when no one else is around. So that's a really important part. And also your social environments, right? Too much solitude is powerful and amazing. Too much time of solitude can be deafening in many ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I just think, I realized for me is like, I love to touch the energy of a big city, of a big event. And then I want to go and retreat into like my own space for a bit of time and have that quiet and that inner voice. And then I need to go out there and get it again. Right. Yeah. And so there's just like this constant, this touch point.
It's like a yin and yang constantly. Yeah. Do you do any
Yeah.
activity trackers or sleep trackers like the Whoop or anything like that? Do you? I'm just
Yeah,
curious.
I used to use Oura Ring often.
Yeah.
I had this amazing bed called the 8 Sleep.
Oh yeah.
Unpaid. The CEO is a friend of mine, but they just it's basically like it's a temperature controlled bed that uses AI analytics.
Oh shit!
So that your partner can sleep on a warmer half side of the bed, and you can sleep on a cooler side of the bed if you want. But all the science points to like you want a cooler environment, and I run pretty hot, so I just noticed like when I come back home, like right now I'm in Miami, it was perfect, and I slept amazing last night. So
well, I was going to say I've got a cooling bed as well, and my wife, she runs hot, but she likes a fan blowing on her, and I can't stand a fan. I need the bed to be cold, and that's helped me out a lot. But I also want to go back to when Apollo said I exercise for this. For those who are listening to the show and not watching, he pointed at his head, he pointed at his brain. And one of the things that I talk about regularly with my executive clients, when they talk about, hey, I'm so stressed out, I'm like, okay, what's your exercise routine look like? Yeah. And they're like, oh, I don't have time for exercise. I'm like, man, that you can't separate exercise from work. Exercise in today's day and age almost has to be a part of work. Right. And if nothing else, maybe a 20-minute walk or something just to get your mind right. Because that exercise, man, I tell you, man, the times that I'm not exercising, my stress level's off the charts. Yeah. And then when I am, it's still there, but I manage it better. It's a huge thing for the mental health is exercise. Well, so I'm glad that you said that.
I don't think you can't subtract a human being from the work. You got to honor the human being and what it means to be human. And that's like sleeping. You talk about exercising, socially being around good people, like filling your brain with good things and your body with good food as well. So it's like, it doesn't work. And I think that's one thing that, men quite often, they're just like, that provider, protector, conqueror role that we so easily fall into, and is continually, programmed in us that it's just like, that's all I am. Like, this is what I do. And this is how I need to do those. This is what I need to do in order to accomplish those things and live those roles and have that experience. But I think one of the things we're doing with our show, Apollo, is helping people understand, like, there's the human part and the being part. The human part is like honor that, our physiology. The being part is what we're putting in, the energy we are, and also what we're doing with that energy and what we're putting into our brain. Like you pointed to your head earlier, because it's like, it's essential. And and when you honor all of that, then you can really go out and kick some real ass instead of burning yourself out, being stressed out, not making really good decisions because you're jacked up on cortisol and adrenaline or burned out in some ways.
I have a question.
Please.
John, 24 years in service you spent, right? Yeah. I know a lot of those times, from my understanding, from talking to some other SEAL teams guys, is they really help you train your brain, and they push you to recognize how powerful this thing is when there is no sleep, right? So I always joke around. I'm like, well, Olympic athlete, we're like super rested, we're optimal, we get the best food, the best environment to try to peak. But when you join teams like you did, the whole concept is like, you don't have good food, you don't have good equipment, you don't have a good environment, you don't have sleep, you're uncomfortable, you're hot. There's no 8 sleep cooling bed in Afghanistan. What do you do? This is ridiculous. True. You know what I mean? Like in Iraq, like exactly. No, it's like you could lay down like whatever. It's So I'm curious because that's such a radically stark contrast to what I'm talking about today. And by the way, I'm very grateful to have these tools available to me that I do this. Some people don't. But for you, having lived that side of your life for so many years and breathing it and embracing it and succeeding in it in that part of your career to today, I guess I'm genuinely curious, how does that work, right? Because not all humans are probably designed to be able to go through that.
Oh, well, I will say I've never actually thought about it from that perspective. And I'll say it's probably because in the special operations community, we are fairly spoiled, at least while we're stateside. We get great food, great training. We do get some of the best equipment. We get some of the best recovery equipment out there. We get some of the most amazing gyms on the planet. I would say they rival some of the Olympic gyms. I'm right here next to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. And it's to the point where the Navy SEAL trident, the emblem that we all wear, that's engraved onto every dumbbell.
Cool.
There's our tax dollars. There's our tax dollars.
There's your tax dollars. I pay taxes too.
I didn't say, John. I'm just saying.
Gladly paying taxes for that. By the way, gladly, more than happy.
The squat racks have video cameras that assess you and be like, hey, your squat's wrong, because it's pretty wild. So I will say, within the special operations community, we're pretty spoiled when we're stateside. That said, when we are in Iraq or when we are in Afghanistan or wherever it is that we go, typically one of the first things we build is a gym, and it's like caveman gym, like a wooden, pull-up bar or whatever. And I think the mindset is there to still take care of yourselves as much as you can, given the situation that you have. It might be, you're working through the night. In the SEAL teams, most of our operations are nighttime, so our rhythms are all sorts of out, our circadian rhythm. But you still do the best that you can. And then when you do retire or transition out, whenever it is, I think it's actually kind of a weird blessing in that regard. Like Will said at the very beginning of the show, when he asked me what the favorite thing was a year after was getting to say no. Well, not only do I get to say no to people, I get to decide where I live. I get to decide where I'm sleeping, how I'm sleeping. So there's definitely benefits on the outside. I get to decide what I do for a living, where I live. I think I just said that. But yeah, there are aspects. I'll tell you this one of the transition that I struggle with the most was, and I don't know if you're going to get this exactly, but there's probably something similar. When I left military service, I knew that I was leaving brothers and sisters who were going to continue to put themselves in harm's way. And I was not any longer going to put myself in harm's way, at least in that regard. I still have kids, so I'm still in harm's way, but I'm not putting myself onto the battlefield. And in a sense, I felt as though I was abandoning that team of folks. And then at the same time, I felt as though I was being abandoned because they still had a mission. So they had to continue doing what they were doing. They didn't have time to stop and, pat me on the back and check in on me, every couple of days. Hey, how are you doing? So I felt that I had abandoned them at the same time they had abandoned me. So there was an emotional aspect to that transition, to that pivot, if you will, that I didn't anticipate. So I'll turn it around and throw it back to you, Apollo. Was there anything similar to that for you all?
Yeah, I think I still go through that today. There's a form of abandonment that's there. I try to come back to Salt Lake City where the team trains full time now, and go see the short track team. Keep in touch with the long track team. Go see those athletes and see how they're doing. It's a very different group. It's very young now. But yeah, there's a weird sense of like, I have these personal goals that I have in my own life that are very different from the short track speed skating world. And then when I go there and I see these athletes, I forget that how much in this microcosm of a bubble that they live in, their world is revolving 12 hours a day around traveling to and from the ice rink for training, recovery, watch tape, review strategy, do equipment, sports psychology. The only time they really go home is for like a nap or to go sleep and maybe have dinner. The rest of the time is spent in this core environment and team. I think a different component though, John, is like I never relied on my team for life and death. We had the relay, and at times, maybe I thought it was like life and death. If they didn't skate faster, it obviously wasn't. So there was a sense of camaraderie and definitely unification around a common goal, which was to be our best and represent the United States the best we could when we go to Olympic Games. Collectively as a team, we were never the best team, except for one Olympic Games where we probably should have won, but we didn't. One of the guys on our team fell, unfortunately. But I would just say, like, my abandonment stuff with the team is I still feel tethered to short track speed skating because it's a part of who I am. I try to do commentary every Olympic Games. For example, the Olympic Games are coming up in February of 2026. They'll be in Milan, Italy. So I hopefully will be there. And my whole goal now is I want to educate the millions of people watching at home in the United States about how cool this sport is, because I think it's really cool. through my own eyes, right? Through my lens, and try to tell them, well, this is why they're doing this, and this is what this athlete's thinking about. And I know they've got both arms in the back, but it's actually not that easy, So it is interesting to see what that looks like, moving beyond the sport. And I'm curious to see what happens in the next 20 years, with the advancements with AI and technology, of how strong these athletes get too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a big question for everyone, not specifically athlete related, but just in regards to technology, AI, and just the changing world, where we're going to be and how things are going to be affected by all that.
Yeah. We just have released an episode this week on AI and that man of masculinity in the world. We actually interviewed ChatGPT. It was fun. It was fun. Yeah, it was a good one. Well, last question, Apollo. It's like, anybody that's looking to take a hard pivot and make a big change, it's like, what would be your advice to them?
So the first thing that I would do is you got to have the hard conversation, and that conversation is really with yourself. It's the what I would call first surrendering to an outcome. So the outcome is you have to do this hard pivot. So what was, and by force or by choice, there must be a change of direction. What are you surrendering to, right? This part of your life is, no matter what you do, that result is done. It's set in stone. There's no asterisk next to that result. It's just like an Olympic race. And you got to move on to the next Olympic race. So all those attributes that got you to that point, again, that finish line was just merely a mirror. So taking those attributes, using the skills that you talked about, Will, about the beginner's mind. And then I think it's really about kind of having these core reminders consistently in your life that this path was never designed to be easy, but if executed appropriately and with the intensity through the friction, you'll carve through that corner and you'll accelerate on the other side. So this is a interesting part of the human experience, right? I think zooming out is the thing that has really helped me is like, when you're in the fight, everything is important and it's painful and no one understands what it's like for you. And you're probably right. Okay. The reality is, when you zoom out, you realize this is just a small part of going through this chapter, and you're in the first 4 pages and it's a 40-page chapter. So you got to stick with it, is what I'm trying to say. So that emotional stuff that you're feeling is natural. It's normal. Embrace it. It makes you human, but don't allow it to paralyze you from taking action. That's the key, is by taking action and a decision to first surrender to the outcome and then make the choice to say, now I'm going to figure out and identify with what the next step is. And I don't know what that is for every person who's listening, but if you are facing a challenge, maybe you have a horrific divorce or breakup or a huge competition coming up or an injury or a financial disaster, whatever it is, you can persevere and get through this, but you have to surrender to that, have the hard conversation, accept it for what it is, and then say, here are the core tenets that make me and who I want to become. Here's how I will achieve to become that person in whatever path that is. That's what I just believe the human experience is so powerful, dude. It is like, the humans have never ceased to amaze me. And it goes against all laws of physics and sports science. There's this thing called the hidden reserves, right? When you have no more glycogen in your body, when you have no more will to give, somehow the body produces more glycogen from the liver. It forces it out through these forms of stress and component, and you're in this moment. And so you can get through this part. If it's really, psychologically, I would say paralyzing, you got to identify some of these core tenets. Get a friend, get someone who you love, find that core community, get into a mastermind, right? It's amazing what talking through your stuff can do.
Yeah. And get to the gym. Work out that stress. I think honestly, work out that stress.
Yes.
Go for a walk.
Use movement.
Right. Movement is so incredibly important. And it's it seems like a lot of people are not moving enough. If you look at, the obesity rate that's happened in this country and keep growing. So
what were the 4 things then, Apollo? Yeah. So movement, sleep, eating,
and social mastermind.
What am I? What?
I would say to me, we've got a world full of biohacking tactics and tools and tricks and supplements and stuff. 100%. And I'm like, okay, that stuff helps. However, what are the 4 pillars for foundational health? Well, it's like how you sleep, how you eat, how you move, and how you think.
Yeah.
Thinking is like your social environment, yourself. So those are the table legs of a table. If you can just get those 70% right, 80% right, you're golden, baby. Like that is, you are good to go.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be perfect.
And don't always sit at the table alone. You know what I mean? For me, you know what I mean? Really, I mean, because again, like it's a social. It's like, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to like add to the four, but like that fifth, that personal and that social aspect is just as important as all of those. So
there you go.
Cool. Where can we find you,
we
Apollo?
Gotta wrap it up.
Where can we find you?
Yeah.
I know you got your book and your Instagram and your website, and you're doing a lot of corporate and public speaking. So please, like, how can people connect with you?
I mean, you can connect me on, I'm on Instagram at Apolo Ohno. I'm on Twitter or X at Apolo Ohno. I write a lot on LinkedIn. That happens to be where a lot of the business community is that I speak to. So I try to just throw up some experimental pieces of content here and there. But if this resonated with you and it impacts you, I feel happy.
There you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it, folks. From Olympic ice to emotional intelligence, Apolo Ohno is showing us that the race never really ends. You just change lanes. And the most important finish line, the one where you find yourself. That's what Apolo said multiple times here. And I love that. So thank you, Apolo, for being here. Will, any last words, or Apolo, any last words?
Just a lot of gratitude is all I'm going to express to you, Apolo, and everyone that's listening to this. It's like you can make change, and it just takes those things that we talked about here. And Apolo, any last parting words, if you will?
No, it's a pleasure to speak with both you guys. I know that we've got more synergy down the line.
Yeah.
You guys do great work.
Thank you.
Human behavior and human behavior change is hard because it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
Right? Been wired through routine to find safety in things that we find familiar. So when you break free from that into an unfamiliar territory, that signals danger to you. That isn't danger. It's just allowing yourself to grow, and you're making new normalcy states. So just got to push through it.
Beautiful.
I love it. And one thing I did say that I would mention to a friend of mine, Karen Charchan, she went through that Next Step program that I was telling you about, Apolo. So the Next Step program is a transition program, 10 days of basically business crash course at Dartmouth's business school, Tuck. And it's military veterans and transitioning elite athletes. And Karen went through it with me, and she has since started a program called Arena M, or it's Aranam, but it looks like Arena M. And it is for transitioning service members and transitioning elite athletes, this program. So Apolo, maybe down the road, I can introduce you to Karen. But cool. I'll be remiss if I didn't mention her and all the great work she's doing with that. And thank you all for listening. Thank you for being here, Apolo. Will. Great episode. We appreciate you all. And until next time, take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Apolo.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.